For more on the rising cost of education in the U.S., you saw him a little earlier. I also spoke to David Feldman, economics professor at the College of William & Mary. David began by breaking down the difference between what he calls the cost versus the price of a U.S. university education.
One of the things that your audience should distinguish, should learn how to distinguish, is the difference between cost. That is what the university spends to provide a year of education, and price, which is what the student or their family is actually charged. This is an unusual business in the United States and in most places in the world. It's heavily subsidized. And the subsidies for public universities come from state and local appropriations. And for private universities, they tend to come substantially from endowment earnings. Public universities have some endowment earnings, but the private schools have much larger endowment earnings. So what this means is that the real thing that parents should keep their eye on is not the list price that's published in the catalog, but the net price after all grant aid that someone with their family income is likely to pay. And that's what makes this problem so complex.
Here's a real basic question. Why do international students, why should they be charged a different rate than a local student, for example?
Once again, you have to break down the American higher education system into its components, into its tiers, and also get beyond the ethical language of should. The basic reason why foreign students pay more is because institutions that foreign students seek out know they're willing to pay that. And foreign students, by and large, don't pay a higher price than domestic students who don't come from the same state where that public university is located. So it's not as though the University of Virginia in my state discriminates against Chinese students. They discriminate against New Yorkers too. Well, seriously, out-of-state students pay a substantial premium. For some schools, this is small potatoes because they don't attract many out-of-state or international students. Other schools depend on out-of-state and international students to create the high quality of education that they offer.
Professor, what would you tell a young parent, whether it's in Europe or in Asia, who are looking to send their kids overseas for this experience? And you see a lot of stuff on the internet, and no surprise, we are all skeptical of stuff that we read and see these days. How would you begin that research project if you were to send your young one to university overseas? What questions should you be asking?
I think you should be asking whether the institution that your young one is looking at will justify the rather substantial expenditure in comparison to the options they have in staying closer to home. Now, for many of those students, the return on that investment can be quite high. Many students from mainland China come to the United States and develop a number of things that they probably would not have been able to develop had they stayed at a local institution at home. They're immersed in an English language environment which polishes their capacity to work internationally, not just in the United States, not just in China, but anywhere in the world. Often their capacity to communicate to native English speakers and non-native English speakers improves tremendously. They also are in an educational environment that, if they choose wisely, they are going to get a very personal, hands-on kind of education, which is generally less available both in China and in Europe, where class sizes tend to be very big and interactions with professors are extremely rare. Lastly, they get networking advantages that might not be available were they to have stayed home.
Right. I mean, look, there are obviously clear advantages of going to a school overseas, specifically the experience that's different from wherever you are from. Talk a little bit about the quality of education in, say, 2023 and beyond. This has been somewhat contentious, is that you see a lot of tenured professors leaving the workplace post-COVID, if you will, and there is a little bit of void of, universities wanting good quality professors to make sure that the quality of education matches the price that you're paying for and the expectations, quite frankly, of both students and parents. What are universities doing to maintain that level of quality?
They are doing what their resources permit. One of the problems that the United States has faced over the past decade and likely will face over the next decade or two is an increasing